Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. We'd like to call the Select Board meeting for January 7th, 2019 order. Are being recorded and broadcast. Address forward and state your name and your address. We'll proceed to the consent agenda. The town accountant warrants, minutes for November 5th and November 13th of 2018. Gift acceptance from the Concord Lions Club of $3,000 to the fire department gift account. Butlock and Lawton, $2,000 to Council on Aging gift account, and the Concord Carlisle Community Chest, $17,090.50 to the Council on Aging gift account. There's one-day special licenses for Stephanie Joraznik for January 12th from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. 40 Westwood Road, wine and malt. The Umbrella, January 18th, 19th, 24th, 25th, and 26th from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. 57 Ornac, wine and malt. And January 20th and 27th, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. 57 Ornac, wine and malt. Sunday entertainment licenses for the Umbrella for January 20th and 27th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. 57 Ornac, the theater. And an extension of hours on January 14th for Saltbox Kitchen, 10 p.m. last call, 9:30 p.m. 84 Commonwealth Avenue. We also have a number of executive session minutes which have been distributed to each of us.
Should we approve the consent agenda?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we should.
Move to approve the consent agenda as read. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Now, review and approve the executive session minutes. We have executive session minutes from August 8th of 2016, litigation Higgins versus Town of Concord. November 3rd of 2017, number 1, the litigation Estabrook Road. November 13th, 2017, number 2, litigation W.R. Grace. And November 13th, 2017, number 3, land acquisition Giroux. Also, November 27th, 2017, number 1, land acquisition Giroux. November 27th, 2017, number 2, land acquisition Estabrook Road. March 19th, 2018, number 1, land acquisition Nagog Pond. March 19th, 2018, number 2, land acquisition Estabrook Road. July 30, 2018, number 1, land acquisition W.R. Grace. July 30, 2018, number 2, land acquisition Nagog Pond and Littleton. And July 30, 2018, number 3, land acquisition Estabrook Road. And as I mentioned earlier, we have had those distributed to each of us, so I don't know if there's any comments or discussion on it.
So I move to approve the executive session minutes as read, not to be released. Second.
All those, let's see, we have some to be released and some not to be released. I believe the November 13, 2017 sessions 2 and 3 were to be released. And November 27, 2017 session 1 was to be released.
I move to approve those executive session minutes to be released. November 13th and November 27th.
And all the others approved but not to be released. Okay.
Yes.
Second.
Wait,
Yes.
I just want to make sure we're careful when she said November 13th.
it's session 2 and 3 on that date, because session 1 is not to be released, so it's just session 2
Yeah.
and 3 of November 13th. And session 1 of November 22nd.
I think that was the motion, yes.
November 13th, 2017, sessions 2 and 3, and November 27th, 2017, session 1 may be released. The other not to be
We
released.
have this.
And second to that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We're ready for the town manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bids were open for the Cambridge Turnpike reconstruction project, and we did phase 1, and now this was phase 2. Total bids were in the neighborhood, the estimate was $7 million, so it's a major project. The bids came in about 10% higher than expected, largely due to dewatering that will be required because the groundwater is high in the area, and the contractor expects to have to dewater substantially. But we expect to award to the low bidder later this week. It will impact our contingency funds, but we'll be able to get the project done. We've received some complaints about potholes on Cambridge Turnpike. Roads under construction, and the contractor is required to maintain it in passable condition. The town crews have also helped to try to maintain it as well, because the raining and then the freezing has caused disruption to the road surface. So, but it is under construction, and folks should try to find another way to go. Last Thursday, January 4th, was the deadline for submission of articles for inclusion in the April annual town meeting warrant. Only one citizen petition article was received that related to the moratorium on artificial turf fields. So we've averaged about 7.1 citizen petition articles for the last 10 years, so that's down from what we normally get. And it means we would have less than 50 articles, and it should be around 47 or so articles.
Maybe it'll be a 3-day town meeting.
Seems like it. The Human Services Department of the town put collection bins around at various town buildings and for gifts for Christmas, and 135 families benefited from the generous donations. There was really a wonderful outpouring of gifts to families in Concord that benefited from the generosity. Sanding crews were called out on Saturday night after the rains, and then the cold came in, and so there was some icing happening. So far this winter, we've spent $113,000 on mostly sanding the roads and some early snow that we had in December, and $200,000 has been committed to salt purchases that haven't been used, leaving us with about $582,000 remaining in the ice account. There's still a long way to go. Let me see, the planning department is working on an A&R plan for the Giroux land that would enable the board to transfer custody of that housing lot to the housing authority if town meeting authorizes that. Marcia Rasmussen, the planning director, participated in a walkthrough with the Mass DOT on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, and they're now down to the punch list items. There's a limited number of additional items that have to be completed before the state would love to turn the project over to the town. We would be responsible for maintenance and security after that. So she hopes that happens later this month, in January. The town moderator is interested in having electronic voting done on a trial basis this coming town meeting, so she's asked the staff to help plan something for perhaps the second night of town meeting to have a select number of articles put to vote using electronic devices. And lastly, Assistant Town Manager Kate Hodges will mark her 4th year anniversary with the town on February 2nd. In light of the added workload that she's picked up in those 4 years, including managing the Minuteman Media Network for access services, operating the Visitor Center and Visitor Services, supervising the Public Information Officer, Sustainability Director, and Facilities Maintenance Team, all of which are new positions, I promoted her to the position of Deputy Town Manager, effective immediately.
Congratulations.
And Chris, you sent us an email about White Pond, that the language is getting worked out on that, and we expect that will open
The conservation restriction has been reviewed by the state staff that must review it. There's been some minor changes made that were acceptable to the Natural Resources Commission, and it's just going to the legal department now for finalization. So we expect that to hopefully take place in a few weeks. And then there's the dissolution of the White Pond Associates charity that will take the Attorney General's office a little time to review, but we do believe that the transaction is on target.
Well, also, good news for all. I understand the National Grid contract dispute appears to be settled, which will hopefully prevent or diminish any delay in their work for the town activities. There will be a public forum on the town manager search, seeking the public thoughts on the personal attributes and professional skill sets you believe are important for the Concord next town manager tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Is that correct? Or is that a week from tomorrow? A week from tomorrow, okay. At the townhouse hearing room. I think everybody should have received. Yeah. You? No?
Did not get that yet.
You didn't?
No.
Yes.
Everybody else, I hope, got it?
Everybody else get their invitation?
Basically, giving information as to how you can have input, and that they're looking for input. So, in fact, it says at the very top, we want your input. I want to bring to your attention a complaint about the Concord Select Board that it failed to adhere to the open meeting law requirements in entering into executive sessions on 24 specific dates spanning a period from March of 2016 to August of 2018. The board has acknowledged that in light of the volume of the requested records, the Thanksgiving holiday, staff is unable to assemble and finalize the minutes for all such meetings in time for the board to review it on the December 3rd. We did review and approved and/or considered for release 11 sets of minutes, and at the next scheduling meeting, we have just passed and reviewed a number of the others. Contrary to the allegation made by the party seeking the complaint, the board did not intentionally violate the open meeting law. Due to the oversight of the differing response time requirements between the public records request and the open meeting law request for the same records, nor when it became infeasible to meet the deadline for the board review of the minutes. The board will continue its review of the minutes for the additional requested, and there's never any intent to ignore the requirements of the open meeting law as it applies to the executive sessions. And as soon as the failure to adhere to some of the formalities in entering into executive session was brought to its attention, the corrections have been made. So I thought that's important to have people be aware of. We're now ready for a 7:10 public hearing for Farfel Inc., doing business as Farfel Italian Market, located at 26 Concord Crossing, for a new Section 15 off-premises package store wine and malt license.
Move to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Hello,
Good evening.
Gina Nason, 214 Bedford Street. So there's been no changes, it's just my failure to turn in the paperwork by November 30th.
So, I confirm all the paperwork is now in.
And everything's in order otherwise, so.
In order, business as usual.
Does anybody have any questions?
No.
Pretty concise.
And present you had to show up tonight.
Yes.
And how long have you been doing business?
This would be my 13th license. So I opened in 2007.
Unlucky number, huh?
I know, right?
Does the public have any comments? I will then just entertain a motion to close.
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
So,
We have a motion.
any discussion? I don't think. Move to approve the issuance of Section 15 off-premise retail wine and malt license to Farfalle. Am I pronouncing that?
Yes.
Farfalle.
Yeah, exactly.
Inc., doing business as Farfalle Italian Market, located at 26 Concord Crossing, on the following described premises: 1,200 square foot storefront with an entrance in front and side, emergency exit, and a 200 square foot storage space in the back of the store. The hours to sell wine and malt beverages will be Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., Sundays, 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. Final approval is contingent upon the review and approval of the application by the ABCC.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. I guess we need to approve then.
Second motion, to move to approve Gina Nasson as manager of record at Farfalle, doing business as Farfalle Italian Market, located at 26 Concord Crossing. The manager must be engaged in the actual management of the licensed premises as her main occupation, and must be present on the licensed premise for not less than 30 hours per week during the hours when alcoholic beverages are sold.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're now ready to, item 7, Verizon Wireless Facility Update. Let's see. Oh, that's one set. How many sets you got?
Just
I have 3 of the same.
Okay.
Figure 1.
I figure 1, 2, and 3. They look very similar at first glance, but they have figure 1.
Why don't you share it?
Yeah.
Oh, do you need another one? Okay. Oh, okay.
If you would just introduce yourselves and fire away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ivan Pagasic with IDK Communications, consultant to the town.
I'm Kate Hodges, Assistant Deputy Town Manager.
Getting used to it, huh?
First time saying it out loud. Yes, and I'm just, give me 1 minute and I will put the maps up on the screen.
That's pretty.
Starting with figure 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to bring the board up to speed, the last time we spoke, the board had asked the representatives from Verizon Wireless to submit some type of letter request to the Historic Districts Commission, asking them what their appetite would be for a similar application to the one that they submitted, 10 or 12 years ago. And so their attorney did that, and they went to an HDC meeting before the Christmas holiday. The representative said that it was a very good meeting, that the people on the commission were informative and very polite, and they didn't say no out of hand, but they would need more information, and understood that there was some safety implications of not being able to have connectivity. I think there was some members of the public who were there that expressed a desire to want to have something located there, both because it's more consistent with the bylaw, and also that it would help with the emergency connectivity services. So following that, we met again with members of the Verizon team and Ivan Pagasic, who is the town's RF engineer, whom we've hired for independent. And we started looking at what would be needed to be able to achieve the ultimate goal of having connectivity basically in the main street. And so one of the things that we talked about was revisiting the police and fire station site, and whether putting something at the police and fire station site, would that negate the need to have something over at the Kais Road site, or vice versa. Ivan went out last Friday and he took a look, walked the properties. He had already previously walked the Kais Road campus, and so he now here has some coverage maps and will be able to speak to you a bit. We didn't ask Verizon to come back because this is really about what is in the best interest of the town, what will meet the town's needs without being aesthetically unpleasing to the eye, and trying to be as consistent as we can with the bylaw. And so I will let Ivan take it from here.
Okay, thank you. So in front of you are 3 figures, and not coming up, but so as Kate indicated, I looked at the Public Works facility, which I had looked at previously some time ago. as well as looking at the police and fire station. And initially, what I wanted to do was look at what kind of coverage you could get from those sites individually, in combination with the existing sites that Verizon has. So figure 1 is looking at the DPW at 140 feet. It's a height that I analyzed previously. It would allow for co-location, and wanted to see, how much of that downtown area would be covered from a single site. As you can see, it covers, by the way, the blue area is in-building coverage, and the green is on-street coverage outside of buildings, if you were just walking the street in a vehicle and not within a building. So, so figure 1 shows that coverage just with the public works facility. Figure 2 looks at just using the police fire station at 140 feet. Now, that site has space issues. There's logistics there. There's not a lot of room. There's, I believe, wetlands behind the facility. So what I looked at instead, and trying to come up with something that's aesthetically more pleasing and trying to minimize the heights, I looked at a combination of utilizing the 2 at lower heights. And what that would do is that would afford the ability, I believe, to stealth the structures, meaning putting antennas within a pole, a flagpole, the potential for, at the DPW, for instance, I know there used to be an old smokestack there at one time, maybe creating a smokestack with the antennas on the inside. That's a possibility. And looking at around the 80 to 90 foot height at DPW. At the fire station / police station, there's a couple options there. Replacing the flagpole that's there today with the flagpole, putting the antennas inside the flagpole, housing equipment in that building that's to the left of the storage building for the carrier, or possibly replacing the existing communication structure that is there today. There's a tower on the back of the building. That tower probably is going to need some work in the short term. So it might be an opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone here, and replace that structure, utilize carrier antennas and the public safety antennas at the same time. So, and that, looking at a height of around 65, 70 feet at that location. And I think between the 2, it gives you very good coverage downtown. I think it satisfies a lot of the search areas of what the carrier was looking for, other than the section of Route 2. But even with the fire station going up at 140 feet, that's not enough to cover fully what was needed on the Route 2 area. So I'm thinking a better scenario is to have shorter structures, stealth structures, and that might be the best way to pursue providing coverage.
Any questions?
So I'm always intrigued by the white spots that just appear.
Yeah.
Assuming that they're not, that means there's no coverage?
It means it's less than reliable coverage.
It's fascinating because some of it just doesn't make sense from a map that you looked at and think,
As to why. Well, it's terrain based. It's what we call land use, land clutter. You take into account buildings, trees, density of forest, open space, and whatnot. That all affects the signal levels.
I guess my first question is to all of us, which is since public safety is really why we're looking at this, whether or not this solved the 911 call problem. And I have to admit, I don't know our roadmaps well enough to look at this and say, I know each one of these lines.
Okay, I'm going to step back even one more and say, these maps look really similar to me.
I know.
Between the green, the blue, and the white. I'm not quite sure how to read these coverage maps.
Okay.
So if you could just help me with one.
Sure.
more. I see more blue on the figure 3. So
Right.
assuming blue is good.
Blue is good because that means you have reliable coverage within a building. Okay,
Within
so
a building.
within a building, which in the wireless arena, there's more and more use of wireless phones and more use within buildings now. It's not the mobile technology it was 20 years ago. It's now replacing landlines. It's becoming the smartphones, streaming, having the phone in use within a building. So the 2 sites give you more coverage, more in-building coverage than 1 site that's higher. And I think it's always a balance. It's, you could go up 200 feet, okay, but we don't want to do that. We don't want to light a structure. We don't want it to be visible from miles away. Maybe, shorter structures and stealth structures would be a better way to go.
Did you look at any of the school property to see whether there was possible sightings on that? 'Cause that looks to me like the area that's sort of the whitest, if you will.
I did. Actually, some time ago, I came up with a solution at the schools to replace one of the light stanchions with a pole with the antennas on the inside, and that would work fine.
And how far away is that from the actual building?
150 feet from the new one.
Yeah, that's closer to Route 2 than it is the high school, though.
Well, it was 150 feet from the 3rd pole of the Doug White field to.
So it's on the Doug White, it's that.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it's at its closest point, it's a little over 150 feet. It was further away where the old school location was, which is why at the time it seemed like a good plan. Now it's significantly closer now.
Is there any other location on the school property that would have the coverage and might not be as near the school building?
Before I even got involved, we took a walk to where the Concord High School fields meet the Concord Academy complex along Route 2. But that would have required a tower, and Verizon had said that they were not interested in a tower, and AT&T was the other carrier that I spoke with. They weren't interested in building a tower.
This was how long ago?
Probably 3 years.
Fairly recently.
Right. I think just the expense and the fact that there wouldn't be an access road that is readily available to be able to get to it. The other thing is that none of the carriers are really in the business necessarily of wanting to build something that then can be co-located, because of course then they're building it so that we could sell parts to other carriers, which would be great and beneficial to us, but not necessarily cost efficient for them.
And I think the concern is obviously, the first concern I have sort of as residents, but I think the school, where you have students there for a good part of the day, and having it that close poses a little bit of an issue.
So we did the 300 and the 500 foot around the police and fire station, because we hadn't done that one yet, and it impacts 8 homes, 3 apartments, and the remainder are single families. So it isn't that it doesn't impact any, but the rest are part of the Concord Museum, the Emerson, Thoreau, Amble, and obviously the police and fire station, and the home in the back. I think that was it when we did it. And if this were to move forward in any way, we would probably have our GIS tech do a more detailed look at that and be able to draw the rings out so that we could show where they are.
I know I attended the Historic District Commission hearing, And they were concerned about the height. I think at that point it was being presented as 120 feet. So bringing it down to 85 feet might very well make them more amenable to approval or.
The most recent HDC meeting that I attended, I guess 2 weeks ago now, there was a large conversation about 5G and sort of that next leap and when that would be coming. So I think that clearly there needs to be cross-pollination of education here so that we are all on the same page.
Yeah, get ready for 5G on municipal-owned light poles and yeah.
I'm not borrowing anything.
Yeah.
in advance. I'm just saying that
Oh yeah,
they're
it's coming.
being formed.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll start in Boston and then work their way out with it's capacity driven and whatnot.
The fire station, you've given kind of two heights, one 140 and 165 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something in between that might have given more coverage to the area that
Well,
a lot of the light out?
I was balancing with the stealth and a 70-foot flagpole. Doesn't look out of place necessarily versus something that is 110 or whatnot. That's what I was trying to do was balance that. Honestly, going up, it's not going to eliminate all that white area. It's the balance. Certainly, you can do that. You could put up a pole that's not a flagpole with the antennas on the inside, and do that if you wish as well. Really, the town, since you own this property, you'd be going out for RFP and you'd be dictating this is what would be acceptable on this parcel.
That's also located in the historic district, the police fire station. Is that
Correct.
There's already a structure there.
There's a structure there that's probably about 55, 58 feet to the top, around that height. So, I try to stay within 10 feet of that, have minimal impact if that was replaced.
And I'm assuming that, given the most recent HGC meeting I attended, the fire station hasn't been approached yet.
These are brand new,
Right,
just,
that's what I was
us
yeah.
trying to workshop some things.
Yeah, absolutely.
We actually haven't discussed it with Verizon yet either. I mean, clearly this has some financial impact because it's two sites to do what they were proposing to do in one, but it's a way to get it done in a way that the town may find acceptable. So we could present it like that if it's acceptable.
No, I appreciate that. I think the town is making every effort to try to find other locations which are not in the heart of a residential area. Heard from the citizens that that clearly is of concern to them. We're trying to respond to that. Appreciate that.
What's the next step?
What's next?
Am I just giving you some direction?
Correct. This is a different RFP. So we would have to, with the board's direction, rescind the acceptance of the offer that was made on the Emerson umbrella, and cite the reason why we're doing that, which has to be, could be aesthetics, it could be anything, but it can't be health related. And then we would have to issue a new RFP that we would draw up either for one or both of the sites. I think our preference at this point would be to try to see what we get with both of these sites inside the parameters of 85 feet and 65 feet, and then put it out on the street as it is and see who comes in, understanding that it may not be Verizon. So you know, the issue becomes if Verizon doesn't offer the most attractive package to the town, and another carrier does, that's great for everybody who has that carrier. It doesn't solve our problem with the Verizon carrier, but I guess that would be on Verizon to make an attractive package to the town.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
we would make sure that was clear.
We're creating an incentive.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But have we mapped, we saw maps earlier when Verizon was in to talk to us about what their current coverage looked like. It was quite clear that compared to some other carriers, they're the ones who had the most significant problem.
Right, and part of that is because all of the church cupolas, with the exception of one, have been taken by other carriers. So Verizon is the one carrier that didn't get in.
So what other carriers have a problem in downtown Concord?
I don't know of any, but it doesn't mean that other carriers wouldn't find it attractive to have more real estate in a community, particularly when their technology is changing, where they're going to just have more capacity need. So we just can't guarantee that they're the only ones that will be interested.
And the carriers understand that process. They understand the fact that it's going to be competitive, and they just have to sharpen their pencils and do a good job on their proposal.
We know what is happening with the siting of the tower in the Middlesex school area. I know that was kind of under litigation of some type.
I only know secondhand,
Okay.
and it's probably more like third hand because it's from the attorneys at Verizon who are telling Verizon's attorney who then tell us. So
Would that have any impact, I guess, on kind of the Ties Road and their coverage overall?
That site is included in this modeling.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, it's just too far north,
Yeah.
but that site was included.
So whatever blue that creates, we don't see.
Correct,
Whatever
correct.
green.
It's off the map, correct, yes.
my
Right.
understanding from their engineer is that the white that you see here up around Lowell Road would be more green, and the green would be more blue. But it doesn't necessarily reach down into the heart of Concord Center, which
Right.
is where our issue is.
Yeah.
It looks to me like the fire station is a pretty good alternative. And I appreciate that we may be not able to go on parallel tracks as a historic district commission. You know, they're going to take a little bit longer time and more issues in some ways involved in that. This one seems to be probably a little bit easier to.
This one being Kaiser Road.
This one being the fire station.
Or fire station.
Well, actually, that's in the historic district too.
Yeah,
So
that's-
it would almost be best if we were able to bid them both and then have a joint application to say that it's one system and both are reduced to so that it would act as if it were one, but that we would be dividing it essentially into two in order to make the less right and to have the
Yeah.
less impact on site.
How expensive is that process for the town?
It's my time and $121 for a legal ad, so it's a good deal.
Probably fit that in the budget.
But it seems like this figure 3 seems to make a lot of sense. And that is the one that has the DPW at 85 feet and the fire station at 65. So it
Yeah.
splits the 140 foot into two locations. And enhances the coverage area. It's furthest from houses, but not every house.
Yeah.
There's still some that would be impacted. Not on the school grounds, which I think we all received a report today, which I have to admit, I only read the abstract. I understood a tenth of that.
I read the whole thing.
You did? Would you like to report on it? But
I
it
was
had
curious, they
concerns
only
about
tested
it.
males, which trust me, is a little bit odd, but nevertheless.
So this seems like a reasonable approach, that was somewhat of a compromise, I think, from where we've been.
Well, again, that study, I don't want to go into that study, that's a health issue.
Yeah.
This is a site coverage.
Site, yeah.
And I like it because with either of the other two, we still have a very tall tower that's gonna run into HDC problems. These might too, for all we know.
They might.
The housing that might be affected by the fire station, there's already a facility there.
Right.
Not quite clear what the marginal impact would be from.
That's their internal facility, so I would think that they have some, but I don't think it's as extensive as, you know, what you would find from cellular connectivity.
So I'd be supportive of doing what we can to move forward with this alternative. See if we can get the on board.
We must have historical documents from the Kais Road site that have shown the height of the original smoke shelter.
Yes.
Yes, but Verizon is actually looking at, that part is almost complete, well, actually, it is entirely in the flood zone. And so that isn't very attractive to a company that's going to have electricity running out there. So what they've looked to do is move it back more towards the 141 Kais Road building in the back. So.
Is there any further exploration of whatever that tower is over at Concord Oil to see if that.
The response that I got was that they were less inclined to work with private business owners because a lot of times, depending on who the lessee is or who owns the building or how the business is doing, the rate can fluctuate for what they charge.
More
and so
expensive.
I would think. So I think they're not interested. The town brings some stability, which I think that they like.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, did you conjecture any kind of possible solution for the coverage near Route 2?
Not since the last go around when I looked at the light stanchion replacement on the athletic field. There's not too much down in that area, unfortunately.
Yeah, in terms of options.
Right, right.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a lot we can do about that.
In the sense I got when I was at the HDC was that, you know, they recognized the town's sort of concerns, and they were more concerned about the height and felt that if the town could come back to them with a modification, that they would certainly give, you know, pretty serious consideration.
I think you're right, and I think that, you know, the question is, you know, what would their reaction be? We're all guessing. I have no idea.
No, but I think it's worthwhile. That's why I asked the question of the cost. It's worthwhile to, I think, move forward. Yeah.
So,
do we need to have a motion to that extent, or are we?
As long as we have your consent to rescind the earlier RFP award and issue a new RFP for these two sites, yeah, it makes sense to me.
so does that take a motion and a vote?
I don't think you have to. I don't
Just
think so.
just authorize
More of an instruction
the
to
deputy town manager to rescind
I certainly appreciate the efforts that have gone into this, because I think we're getting a lot closer to a solution, and I'm very pleased with that.
I'd like to note that this was the first project I was assigned 4 years ago.
So you're getting the
It's
sense
really
of
very
timing.
special to me. I'm sorry to see it come to an end.
I have a hunch
Yeah.
it.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
We are now ready to move on to a review of draft warrant articles for the 2019 town meeting. We have a copy, table of contents. I assume everybody saw Carmen's response. She was unable to be here tonight. She was invited to be, but unable to attend. But she did send a memorandum with her thoughts, which I thought made a lot of sense.
Did you get a copy of the warrant itself, the full document, which wasn't made available to you over the weekend, but you have the full warrant?
Yeah.
There's some adjustments that
Part of the package, I haven't.
Yep.
Heather sent it.
Yes.
read. In terms of reviewing, it strikes me that we do have a couple of new items that I think were raised in regards to the issue of Airbnb. There was a law passed and signed which would allow the town to tax 6% and a series of regulations as to what would be required for individuals to be able to be listed on the Airbnb and be licensed to do that. Since that was fairly new, that did not come up in the preliminary meeting, but that is included in these. And I don't know how much revenue we're really looking at in that regard, but...
What is our total number of Airbnbs that are registered in Concord, do you know?
I spoke with someone today who said who saw 50 listed.
50 Airbnbs.
Yeah.
Those are
And
the ones that are listed.
Those
Right, well, I
are listed
understand.
as available, they're not all registered, and we do have a process for registering your Airbnb through the Board of Appeals, so they're not necessarily, those are the ones that are advertised, they're not necessarily registered.
We probably will need to, if we approve this, put out some type of information sheet as to how people
Yeah.
would be able to go ahead and register and whatever. My understanding is that the tax, you would have to apply, but the tax would only apply if you rented for more than 14 days in a calendar year.
That was in the state law.
Yeah. But I would assume that Concord would be a fairly attractive place for Airbnb, and there might be people coming over for the summer, a month or two, so.
Would it be 14 consecutive days? So
No.
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 We were in that calendar.
Oh, okay.
I'm not
Chris,
sure if you
excuse
can
me.
Rent Airbnb for months at a time. Right?
I don't know about Massachusetts.
I didn't think.
Can't California.
Chris, you mentioned that currently they go through the zoning board of appeals. Aren't they registered as bed and breakfast at this point? That's the only mechanism we have right now, or?
I don't know if they're considered a bed and breakfast or there's a designation for Airbnb. I'm not sure. I know there's
Okay.
a process that's used.
Okay.
I remembered a year ago or so, there were a number of letters sent out to people who were advertising on Airbnb but had not been licensed. So I don't know how that was working. But, I think it does seem to be kind of a way to the future, and if the town generates some revenue as a result of it, as well as the citizens of the town.
So the enforcement was if the building department received a complaint, perhaps from a neighbor, saying that my neighbor's advertising an Airbnb and is not registered with the town, then the building commissioner would send a letter to the property owner and ask them to apply or otherwise take enforcement action. But it was generally in response to a complaint.
I know, there have been complaints about it. People who use Airbnb, they come in and big parties or whatever else. It seems to me Concord would be less prone to that than an urban setting, but it's something clearly the police are going to have to be on the lookout and be aware of. So, and probably notified when there are rentals of that type, just to be sure. But that was really one of the only ones that I think hadn't really been discussed. And
I have a number of questions.
Yeah.
I don't know how
Yeah.
we're going to attack this, but.
you start attacking, stop you.
So, Article 15, Chris, I raised with you just before the meeting started. I understand that there needs to be some kind of explanatory box. Because unless you're inside baseball, you don't have a clue what that means.
This is Article 15.
Yeah. Authorization to accept Mass General Laws, Chapter 71, Number 71E, School Property Fund.
And my next question has to do with Article 16, and it doesn't really have, which is the PEG access cable funding, I don't have any problem with it, but now that this is a town department, is there some way that, is it still a requirement that every year we would have to go to the town to?
It's a revolving fund, and we have to authorize the revolving fund.
So it can't just be
Permanently,
permanently, we can't paint it green or?
I would probably, if you would just briefly explain Article 15, because I must say,
Article
the-
15 or 16?
15.
School property fund.
right, I'm
Yeah,
not sure if
I
I...
had a brief conversation with the superintendent, the finance director, and I did a month or so ago, and so I think this is the article she was referring to. She indicated that there is a preschool at the Ripley School that generates about $100,000 in revenue, and the revenue goes to the town's general fund. The request would be for the school committee to have that fund come to the schools. So the school property leasing article would allow that to happen. So that, I believe that's what's happening there. I didn't hear the school committee's discussion of it, but I think that's where the intent is to have this revenue that's being taken in a school building at the Ripley Administrative Building for special, I think it's a combined special needs and other preschool.
I just think it needs.
Yeah, it needs to be explained, so we'll ask them to provide that.
Do we know if that's issues come before the finance committee yet?
Somebody here might know.
Well, maybe, except that I'm having trouble with my audio feed, so what is the issue?
Well, perhaps Mr. Grom, I don't know if Mr. Grom is up to speed on it, or I don't want to put him on the spot, but maybe I just did.
No? Okay.
I doubt that it's come to the finance committee yet.
Right.
So it's really some revenue that's brought in through a preschool program operated by the school department, but the revenue goes to the general fund.
This is,
That doesn't support the school.
I don't think we have not.
Okay. It sounds like it's sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul a little bit, depending how one would look at it. Maybe Paul's more deserving of it, but we're representing Peter here, so.
Next. So the next one that I have concern about is Article 19, which is the sustainable growth rate. Finance Committee article, I believe it is. So independent of how I might view the article itself, I think just as a heads up, I don't think people know what a sustainable growth rate is. And so it's not defined in here. I know in the earlier email iterations, as I saw this running around, there was a definition of some kind of what that meant, but I would think before the town would be willing to support it, even if it was interested in it, they would need some explanation of what that is.
So you think we should put such a definition in the explanation?
What? Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
or everybody's, you know, it's not it's not like GMP or something.
Correct.
So I think it would be important to support it, to define what you guys have in mind by sustainable growth rate. But that doesn't mean that I think that's a good idea in any way, but I think it necessarily would have to have some kind of a definition here. Article 20 is the next one. This is one of 3 articles with respect to affordable housing. And Chris, the intent of the article is, as I think I wrote, was to have it, the sum is correct. It doesn't mention free cash in there, but I understand that's the, pardon me, weasel language that is in here until you get to the actual motion. But my intent in writing it was that it would be a standing order, and that is every year we would look at our free cash balance, and if the free cash balance was within the guideline of 5 to 10%, then $500,000 would be allocated to the Affordable Housing Fund. The way this is written, it accomplishes it now, but we would have to go back again next year and go back again next year. I mean, I guess that's okay, but that wasn't the intent wasn't to be a standing order.
I agree. You laid it out that way. I think each year you would have to appropriate the funds, so you couldn't, I don't think you could get away from
So we would have
asking
to
town
include
meeting.
it every year.
Yes. It could happen automatically, and there could be a calculator in there, so if free cash was at 8%, then it would automatically be 400,000 or something. You could set it up that way, but you still have to have
Every
this
year you would need
future
to
town
go
meeting.
and ask the town to actually approve.
This year's town meeting can't bind a future town meeting.
Could it, in the language here, state the intent that this would be an ongoing annual
Process.
I just don't want it to seem like a one-time, because it just wasn't the intent for it to be a one-time shot.
It was not meant to deplete free cash, it was within,
Oh,
once we were within that 5 to 10% area, that's not mentioned in here, I don't think. And so I think
No, that's
that
right.
probably could also be included, so they understand that it's not an automatic and it's not when we are a low balance of free cash.
So if we have to go every year, okay, but we ought to have the boundaries in there and make it clear that it's intended to be every year.
And the intent would be that once whatever funds were removed, that it would still be within that 5%. So,
Taking, can't take.
just over
Never-
5%.
never go
Right.
below.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay.
Fair enough.
And then the next two articles, Article 21 and 22, are by far the more, I think, complicated articles on the warrant. And the version that we have, or that I have anyway, still has language suggested by our attorney, as well as language that was suggested by the House Counsel on revenue. And I think it's just a matter of making sure they're reconciled, and which ones stay in and which ones go out. The attorney for the revenue, House Revenue Committee, is the one who drafted the original detail here, based on legislation that was currently in front of the House. So Nina's comments, I mean, are well-intended, but I wouldn't want it to get in the way of language that the state thinks is
required.
something they can deal with.
And the state has already approved in other towns.
They haven't.
They've
They
not.
haven't, but one is in process, and they believe, I think it's Arlington.
Somerville.
Wasn't that what you said?
I think Somerville.
Somerville proposed to transfer it, and she thought it was dead, but then she wrote to us after our meeting saying, no, in fact, it looked like it was alive and it's going to be approved in this legislative session, so.
And the other question I have about Article 21 is Section 4.
Yeah, I've got that too.
Whether or not we wanted to include all the housing groups in that, or at least add the Concord Housing Authority, or whether the law prevents that, I don't know. But I think our intent was that it was to specifically call out the two affordable housing groups that are charged with developing affordable housing specifically.
The one that is most sensitive to me is in 21, which is Section 2, and it's the part where when you create the revenue, it's where the revenue goes. And this says goes to the Concord Affordable Housing Trust, or the Select Board, or the Town Treasurer. And am I correct that this again would need to be resolved at the town meeting and say one of those?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Where is that in Section 2?
I was looking for the same thing.
It's an article, sorry, it's Article 22.
Oh,
Not 21.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Section 2
Section
is
2
the
is
last,
yeah.
the last sentence. And I just wanted to be clear that we have yet to figure that out.
No, we discussed
Yeah. But
the choice.
and when is it that, can that wait until town meeting?
We have a legal review with town council of this on Wednesday, so we'll ask if that's something that we really should specify in the warrant language itself, or can that wait until the motion at town meeting?
That'd be great if it could wait, but I know it's a legal
We'll try to figure it out.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it may be helpful if it was clarified prior.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed what you said.
I think it would be helpful if it was clarified prior to town meeting.
So that it's written in the warrant.
Yeah.
That's,
This is trivial. Article 31, the explanation box just stops in mid-sentence. So
Article 30.
page 21,
There.
just goes, and,
Oh, yeah.
just stops in mid-sentence.
It's a zoning bylaw, yep.
And then my last one is Article 36, which is the formula business article. It's a rather lengthy article here. But unless I sort of didn't get it, which is entirely possible, they don't tell us what a formula business is or defines it. So you've got to outlaw something very much if it is. Again, that's without suggesting I think it's a good idea, period, but it gives you, paragraph 3.3.4 talks you about criteria if you're going to have a waiver, which according to this proposal you could have a special permit. But it doesn't actually say what a formula business is. I didn't read, unfortunately. We have a formula
We have one in West
restriction in West Concord.
I think it does have.
I think it's more than 7.
More than 7 installations, and you've got your uniform signs.
Well,
Yes.
in any event, if it's gonna,
Yeah, we should have
it's gotta be
the
in there
same
so we know
language.
what we're talking about.
I think the language is similar to what was in, when I was listening to the planning board drafting it, they went back to West Concord
Yeah.
and adopted similar language. It does say it's limited to 12 in Concord Center.
You know, they lay out the limitations of it, but am I a formula business? So I just think that if it's gonna be just adopting the West Concord formula business definition, I mean, okay. Say so.
yeah,
It's a good point, it actually doesn't say
yeah. It needs to be filled out.
Yeah.
No question.
formula business is.
I don't think spelling it out is gonna make it. Why? And then, just a reminder, I'm sorry to be fuzzy on this, but these are warrant articles that have come to us as a town for town meeting. We have some discretion, do we not, as to whether or not some of these articles show up.
You're required by law to include any citizen petition articles
Right.
submitted by voters and planning board and zoning and bylaw amendments. You're required to include those.
Any other
Those
amendments?
are at your discretion.
And what about articles that are originated by the district?
Like the Minuteman Vocational District or the CC?
Minuteman or,
the
I
Concord.
don't have anything in mind, it's just a question, if there was a high school warrant article on here that we didn't
Yeah.
want.
That's the one instance there was one case in the past where the board declined to put an article on that the school committee had requested.
So again, I don't have anything in mind.
I'm watching.
Just a question. That's fine. But other zoning and citizen petition articles. And if we were going to exercise that,
I'll be asking you next Monday night to approve.
finalize the vote.
Yeah, finalize the warrant.
And that's just simply voting. We don't want to include Article 6 or whatever it is.
You should also look at the order. That got to the language. Is this the right order that they should be taken in? Now, we should be mindful, as Chris mentioned, that on the second night of town meeting on Tuesday night, we will likely be implementing a trial run of electronic voting. Whatever articles fall on the second night, most likely will be voting with our phones. It's a trial. We'll have paper ballots too.
And just so that those who are listening know, are reminded, we're not talking about voting from home, we're talking about inside the.
You have to be
in the building.
You have to be in the gymnasium to vote
With a cell phone.
with a cell phone. Or if you don't have a smartphone,
There'll be tablets.
there'll be tablets. Right.
And it's only going to be for testing a couple of articles, as opposed to everything.
I don't think that's been decided yet, how it will be tested. All of the whole warrant will be uploaded onto the website, so that everything will be there and available for voting, including test questions that were a test, as we saw in Wayland.
But we'll use the same process we use as if there wasn't a test, if you will, as a backup, to be sure.
No.
We'll do it, in other words, that would be the only mechanism.
The conversation right now is that we will employ a trial use of electronic voting. There will be paper ballots for folks who either don't want to try electronic voting and they will be counted, or for people who don't want to, for whatever reason, don't want to do it. So there will be a count. The first count will be the electronic count, and then there'll be a vote using the paper ballot. A person who has come in, downloaded the app, is ready to vote electronically, will not also be given a paper ballot.
Okay, so they can't, all right. And so is the assumption based on the town meeting you've experienced that this will probably take a little bit longer in the evening? I'm just trying to think about the framing of that.
That's a question we asked. I don't know, it's hard to tell. You know, we don't, if an item were to have been a paper ballot and then it was voted to approve a secret ballot, this would be a shorter time period. Counting paper ballots individually can also be time consuming. If we don't need that, this might take more time.
Let's go back to something I thought I heard you say. Okay. When I show up,
you show up.
If I got my phone,
yep.
I'll download the app, but I'm not getting a paper ballot.
I believe that's the case. You will be.
Everything is going to have to be.
I believe the entire warrant. Now we just have one meeting, with the potential vendor who would do a trial run. I don't think you would get a paper ballot because there would be no way of controlling a vote by phone and paper ballot. So
no, but the consequence of that is everything is going to have to be done by electronic voting.
And will the town meeting have to vote to approve this process?
I think the moderator
can determine.
So
there's a big move across the state, by the way, and the Mass Moderators Association to at least try electronic voting. So we're not alone. There are a lot of communities doing the same thing.
So here's another.
So we've done it in town already for the housing production plan forums, was with electronic voting in the room, and that, instantaneous read, and that was very successful. But we were, as I recall, we were all handed devices. Mm-hmm. In that case, we weren't reliant on.
That's the way it was.
Different vendors have different approaches. When we went to observe Wayland, everyone was given a voting device. This particular vendor uses a smartphone.
So here's a question, which circles back to the beginning of our select board meeting. And I know that coverage is often very spotty.
Yes.
In the high school.
So we had a lengthy discussion with the vendor and with our own chief technology officer for the town, and he has a solution of running our town Wi-Fi into the gymnasium. So it will not be impacted by the school's less than efficient Wi-Fi system.
So they bring in temporary equipment.
Right.
That's what I'm assuming, there'll be some form of booster put in.
Yes, they noodle some pretty high thinking on that. So that we can run into that.
Well, if we've got students in the room, they're gonna be quite interested in the fact that they can get the reception for that period of time.
Yeah. And they were talking about having boosters around the room, just like they had in Wayland. There are a number of different, I don't know what the technology is, but they have multiple of them around the room, so that there are no dead spots.
So
But you
I,
have to be in the gymnasium to vote. You can't vote from the cafeteria, you can't vote from any other
They'll
place but
probably
the
set up a
gymnasium.
specific temporary Wi-Fi network
Yep,
for that. As soon as you go outside
Yep.
the gymnasium, it'll die.
and every day when you go to register your phone, when you come in, you get a QR code that activates it for that particular night. It'll be color coded to match the same color as your ballot. So that you can only use it on this code, on this phone for the vote.
But the plan is only one night.
Only one night.
And do we know which night? Is it
Tuesday night.
the second night?
The second night.
Because it sounds like Carmen is saying that the articles pertaining to special legislation for affordable housing likely to be of significant community interest, be best to position them to avoid being taken up at the very end of the first night of the meeting in order to have, in the order I have proposed, I would guess that the CPC appropriation recommendations would come up first in the second night. And I'm assuming she's saying that then they'd be followed by the affordable housing article.
Well, it's always hard to tell where debate will end
Yeah.
in planning town meeting. So, I'm assuming that this particular version of the table of contents is the one that we received from Carmen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So she has done a little bit of rearrangement. All right, so,
Well, that's interesting, because she references numbers in her list that don't exist on this.
oh really? Maybe this will be your
I know she recommended the use of free cash be moved later. That they be taken up after the budget.
Maybe I just misread something, but.
So who's got her email
well,
up
the,
there?
the last thing I saw from Heather is I thought she had incorporated some of Carmen's
Yeah.
sequence, but not all of it. That's what I recall.
And here we have number 47, under formula business, under 30, and we end at number 46 in this draft.
So I think Linda is correct,
Yeah.
that this version is the one that Heather had done some modifications to and provided for us in the packet, that had some that were consistent with Carmen's recommendations, but she hadn't seen Carmen's email yet.
Correct. Yeah.
So I can pull up Carmen's and let's see what it says, the third version of it. So the use of free cash is probably best considered following town meeting action on all the budgets. Which makes sense.
So number 6 would be moved to later. The first one.
Yes, so after town budget, after,
So
And all the
after
other
13.
so this would then become
This would become
14. So 6 moves to 14.
Actually,
I'm
probably
not gonna try to read
13
them.
because all the others are moving up.
And what else did she say? Now, I was going to her budget together, other than the enterprise funds. The articles pertaining to special legislation for affordable housing are likely to be of significant community interest, and it would be best to position them to avoid them being taken up at the very end of the first night of meeting. In the order I have proposed, I would guess that CPC appropriation recommendations will come up first on the second night. So she has Town budget is number 6, that plan is Minuteman. Then Article 13 is the beginning of Articles 13 through 17 are the CPS and CCHS. Articles, there might be considerable debate on maybe Article 15, which is the feasibility study for the middle school.
For sure, those things.
Then there's free cash. She has free cash following all the school articles, so
Right.
it's number 18. Not 14. Is this helpful to read through hers while we're looking at this? After free cash is the sustainable growth rate,
Which is number 19 in her draft.
yeah. And Airbnb is 20.
Or number 48.
And she has it 20 in her draft.
Well, my suggestion is that Tom is meeting with Carmen and council and Chris Wednesday, right?
Correct.
And so what we might do is take advantage of that time to get a definitive order
Right.
and then come back to us on Monday
Okay.
with that revised, because I
Right.
think we have to give a lot of deference to Carmen's
Yeah.
suggestions for order. Picking that break between the last article, and you ought to have in mind maybe a couple of articles that are going to noticeably come up that we could move up. And fill some time if we had, time for 2 more articles on Monday. We have a couple of zoning, I don't know what, but there might be a couple of articles that are, plus she hasn't done
I
She hasn't done the consent calendar yet, so we usually lose, 20-25% of these articles to a consent agenda. So, she's not going to know that until after the public hearing. Historically, the moderator doesn't come to conclusions about consent articles until after the public hearing.
I think that's a good suggestion, Tom, you're on it.
Yep.
And then we can compare this, right? Compare Carmen's version to what we have from Heather to what you come up with from the last meeting. We're meeting next Monday night too, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So we are.
Are we all set with that then? Or yes?
Diane Proctor, 57 Sudbury Road. Good evening. Tom, I'm very interested in your question about whether this requires the conversion to an electronic voting system, requires some consent on the part of the town. It is such a dramatic change from the way in which our town has voted, in which you can actually see, as you look around a room, who has a particular perspective and how they voted, and this would now make that considerably less apparent. Except, for the people who've spoken publicly to an issue. And I wonder at the wisdom of going forward without such a consent, and I wonder what consideration you all are thinking about vis-a-vis
I
that.
also recall this last election that, one of the things that we touted in Massachusetts is we have a paper ballot backup. And some places like Florida don't necessarily, and there's some advantage perhaps in having that.
But I just wonder if there is if other towns have followed a protocol for that, or whether there's just been an administrative determination. It seems to me that in a town like Concord, this could evoke, not provoke, but evoke, considerable thoughtful discussion. So I'm just.
I think that's good.
Alice, do you know, having gone to Wayland, was there a discussion?
Theirs was, they bought it must have been a discussion because the funds hadn't been appropriated by town meeting to purchase the system.
This wasn't the first time.
And it was a considerable investment for owning all the equipment. So this is a trial to see whether it could work in town. And to be honest, there was some discussion at the meeting just about exactly what you have mentioned. that perhaps it's time to look at town meeting in general and have a town meeting study committee. We all remember the town government study committee looked at everything except town meeting. And that it might be time for us to review, given the state of electronic voting options, that it might be time for us to think about doing a similar study for how we manage and administer town meeting. Some towns I know have also moved town meetings to twice a year or every Monday night for 3 consecutive nights or whatever. So there are different ways that we can consider doing town meeting. So if we're going to look at town meeting, we should look at all of it.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I guess my concern is that the notion of having a test and the test kind of being perhaps on the more controversial of the issues of the town meeting. I wouldn't usually have a test, you do it on the simplest perhaps. Make sure that sort of if it works on a simple issue, that, I mean, the first night might be a better one to do it on.
Because we're doing the consent agenda and a lot of them
Right.
more. But you're
So
also
I think
getting
there's
the
more
budgets.
discussion to be had
Yeah.
about whether this is going to be tried on just a couple of votes, not the ones that are highly controversial where, so I don't know that those decisions have been made. I'm hearing it and we'll bring it back to the committee.
Yeah.
And since a couple of you went to see this in practice, I don't know what procedures some of these other towns are using for the transition. So when even if they're doing a test, what backup they have for those couple items that they did do the test on. You want to be optimistic about how this proceeds, but should there be a challenge or,
But we didn't see a test, we saw a full-blown, that's the way they ran the meeting.
In Wayland, but at that point, they had already gone to town meeting, appropriated funds, bought the equipment, so somewhere along the way, they must have voted to go forward with it.
And there may well be a backup system somehow, I just don't.
I don't know about Wayland's
Yeah.
backup system, we didn't even ask that.
Didn't see,
We did hear about a lot of the back-end forensics on the electronic voting. You can see that nobody's voted twice, you can see that people who voted, in a yes or no, there was no hanging chad. So they have a lot of backup within the system, but it doesn't account for somebody. They can tell that somebody attempted to vote from outside the room. They can do all of that, but it doesn't get it the backup that having a paper is. You've got a backup that's electronic.
Yes, sir. Please.
Nick Pappas, 300 Virginia Road. Yeah, I just want to reiterate what I think I heard the lady say, but I didn't hear any of you say back, which is the change that's really big here is that we aren't going to be standing up and publicly declaring what we're voting for.
Right.
That's a huge change.
Absolutely.
And certainly, I don't think it should be for any controversial issue, given how important that issue has been to some people in town. That's all.
we don't stand up, number one, unless the moderator asks us.
Well,
You were made visible.
And there are people who have said they find that intimidating. Helpful.
it's a change, that's all. And it's a thing.
Charles Phillips, 65 Fairhaven Road. I want to go back to those 2 articles on affordable housing briefly. So, Chris, are we going forward with pretty much what was recommended by the Affordable Housing Funding Committee
Yes.
as far as the rates are concerned?
For so there's a proposal to have a surcharge on building permits,
The building
a
permits
transfer,
and the transfer tax.
and then an appropriation free cash. I proposed $500,000, so it's not quite what the committee had recommended. But it's
I'm thinking just those 2.
so there's 3
transfer and in terms of the transfer tax and the building permit fees, you're going forward as recommended.
Yes,
And an
yes.
appropriation of
And an
town
appropriation, so there's
funds.
3
And
articles.
appropriation.
So both require special legislation, and so we treated them as separate articles on the real estate transfer
Of course,
tax and
yeah.
the surcharge.
Okay, and then the other question, I noticed that with the Article 22, with the real surcharge, you said that there was a choice of it's gonna go here or here or here, you know, to different places. But wouldn't how about the real estate transfer tax? Wouldn't that also have an issue of where we want the money to go in that one?
Yes, same question.
It'll be the same,
Yeah.
these will be
Yeah.
both
Yes.
in those articles. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Charles, I'll send you a copy of those two articles so you can see what they look like. Unfortunately.
I know,
But
I appreciate it,
I'll
thank you.
send them along.
They're both saying that.
You ready to,
Are there any other questions about?
any other comments or questions, anybody have? Yes.
Hi, Carolyn Reed, Chair of the PEG Access Advisory Committee. This is about the warrant articles. In a version that I saw earlier today, the PEG article is listed twice, and I'm hoping that, and was it changed?
It will be, it was
Okay.
noted.
It was Articles
Listed twice.
16 and 45, I really appreciate that, but I would recommend it as far as placement, that it be placed with the other enterprise articles. It is not an
With the
enterprise,
enterprise?
it's not an enterprise fund, but it will be heard on March 11th during the enterprise and special revolving account hearing, as I understand. Thank you.
Take notes on that one and bring that up at your meeting.
Yeah.
Well, it is at the end of the enterprise funds.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this version.
So we should wipe it out early.
Right. I think it's
Ready to move on now to, agenda item number 9, annual license renewal. The license is not renewed at the December 17th, 2018 meeting.
so moved.
There's just one license that was not removed, it's the Class 2 license. Dan, my computer just went dark.
So move to approve the 2019 annual license renewals as listed on a memo dated January 4th, 2019.
Yes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, we are now ready for any public comments.
We already got it.
Well, we've got a number, but we have an agenda exactly, there may be something. Now, committee liaison report.
Yeah,
Oh,
one.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
I was late. Nick Pappas, again, 300 Virginia Road. On the cell phone coverage, I just wanted to point out, I know you all saw it, there are still huge areas of the town, including where I live, that have very poor coverage. And given the importance for public safety, but also the future importance for transportation, the systems we're likely to look at to improve or diminish traffic and reduce emissions and everything else are largely shared ride services like minibuses or other things that are dispatched via cell phone technology and tracked by cell phone technology. So, you know, we're going to be hindered in moving to those services, and those are part of our goals.
Thank you, it's an ongoing problem, I think, it's, we use more and more broadband, so. Liaison reports. I don't think there were too many meetings.
I have none this time.
Alice and I met with the town manager search committee on the 18th. Very productive meeting. You know some of the consequences of that. We set dates for every household in town other than Jane.
Her dog ate the.
Concord announcing the 3 public forum. The search committee has also met with the senior management team in the town, meeting with the superintendent of schools, meeting with the town manager, meeting with the president of Emerson Hospital. We're in the process now of completing the profile and description, profile of the position in the town, and the search committee next meets on January 24th, at which time we anticipate approving that profile and the publicity or advertising plan, and then that will go out February 1st. So that's the timeline, and I sure hope folks will come to the public hearings that we're having on the 15th and 16th. And also, if you go to the town's website, look under Town Manager Search Committee, you'll see that there is a website that the consulting firm has set up. And there is also an email address that sends confidential information to the search committee. It doesn't come to the town at all. We'll never see it. So it's not town stuff. So if anybody who wants to, please, weigh in, and I hope you'll attend one of the public forums.
I had no meetings that I attended.
Okay, well, as I said, the HDC meeting that I attended on the 20th had discussion later on about the anticipation of 5G and its impact. But the bulk of the meeting was in discussion about the new Concord Museum. And there are, and the visibility issues from Lexington Road. The differences, which I guess are quite significant, of the building as it is from the plans or the drawings that were understood by the neighbors and in the meeting previously. If I'm misspeaking, I mean, I wasn't a part of that, but that's certainly the discussion took place on the 20th. Size of windows, the HVAC and other mechanicals, which are largely visible from Lexington Road. This will all be, I'm sure, discussed again. And the museum director was present. There was general, there was a general understanding. It was not the issues are painful for those involved, but it wasn't a contentious meeting in that way. I mean, there was general understanding about what the concerns were.
So were the designs not written by the HDC, or was they not built to?
Well, the designs that were approved were not construction designs. So they were more conceptual designs. So now we're getting into a level of detail that I think it's better to go into the HDC minutes from that meeting, which are not up yet. But I think that there were, there's significant discussion about changes going forward, what can be changed, starting with simple things like putting shades on windows that are visible from the street side and show boxes and office supplies, things like that. So there's some fairly low-hanging fruit changes that can be made. I think the others are going to be probably discussed at many other meetings. Again, as a non-abutter, this is news to me. So, the other point discussed that I thought was interesting was a real complaint about the town sign guidelines. I think the direct quote was, "It's a mess of inconsistency and confusion for the HDC."
The sign.
Our sign guidelines.
Bylaw?
Nope, the town sign, the physical signs.
The sign.
You mean the road signage?
Road sign, this was a sweep across the board of all of we're not talking about the sign guidelines per temporary
Physical signs.
but the physical placement of signs.
Placement of signs.
And the numbers and look, etc.
Those are in the historic district.
Well, obviously, this is in reference to that, which is in the historic district. I think this is specifically.
They're the ones that approve the parking signs on Main Street.
This is in specific reference to the retail sections of town and the very.
Say goodnight, Tom.
And it was finished with the discussion of the fact that merchandise, there's a specific thing that says merchandise should not be out from November to April, and that is not something that is regularly adhered to. So there were some.
That's a sign?
That falls into the physical signs and the look of the thoroughfares in Concord.
You said merchandise shouldn't be outside was the concern, but merchandise should be a sign.
These are two separate discussions.
I'm sorry.
All about the physical look of the historic
Sort
district.
of the streetscape.
From the streetscape, thank you. Far better put.
Okay.
I also attended the Magic meeting, and was, as always, incredibly impressed by what all of our neighbors are doing, as well as what we've been doing. Because we did receive an award with Minuteman Historic Park, the grant to study and collect. It's really a transportation discussion, but using that award to look at moving people through Concord with the goal of access to our historic sites and specifically Minuteman National Historic Park. But that's one of our baby steps towards our transportation needs. We are not where many of our neighbors are in terms of having tackled transportation, or even really having taken gotten a good step towards it. So I was inspired by others.
I attended the Climate Action Advisory Board meeting. This next meeting will be which happens later next week, is a very thoughtful group of people helping to define what are the next steps in reaching our sustainability goals and reaching our climate reduction goals, climate impact reduction goals. The next meeting will be devoted primarily to figuring out the kind of consultant that will be needed to help us write the action plan for implementing a carbon reduction plan for town. And this committee has a lot of great ideas that are all out there, and hopefully at the end of this sausage making, there'll be some good guidelines on what would be needed in developing the plan. Because there are a lot of different consultants that do this kind of.
Sustainable sausage?
Yeah, all 100% grass-fed. I also attended the cemetery committee that was grappling with whether to bring articles to town meetings for discussion about the future growth and needs of citizens to have burial sites at town meeting. But they did a master plan, which is up on the web. They held public information sessions. They had a large public meeting. So they decided not to bring it to a discussion on the floor of town meeting until they knew if they had a need for any expenditures. It's a very good and thoughtful group, and the current thinking is to meet the needs of residents who have said they would like to have a way to preserve a scattering garden or remains that are buried or put in a columbine. We don't have that right now. That's an option that Sleepy Hollow, and they're looking at doing that.
Chris, I just had to, Jane reminded me of the issue of the national park. With the shutdown, federal shutdown, is there any issue?
I haven't been contacted by the National Park, but I had it on my list of things to check in with the police to be sure of this communication.
Yeah.
Well, I do know that there have been listings all over the country about impacts of this shutdown on all of our parks. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, miscellaneous correspondence. I know I signed a couple of things. I'm not sure whether that required thank you notes, I guess. So for the gifts. So
We did get a couple of things about Verizon Wireless.
Yeah.
A number of concerns that citizens describing their ongoing concerns, as well as that report.
I think that report was focused more on the siting of a tower near a school. So that was not part of what we're recommending. And any other correspondence comments? I don't think have any nomination or appointments, so I think we're ready for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
At 8:40.
All in favor?